I'm not the kind of guy who likes drama. Never have been. I like my mornings slow, my job simple, and my evenings predictable. My name's Timothy Garrison, 42 years old, software technician by trade, average by most other standards. Married to Deborah for 11 years now, living in a quiet little cul-de-sac in Greenville, South Carolina. You've probably driven through a town like mine. Nothing much happens, and folks like it that way. Or at least I used to. When I say I had a stable life, I mean boring in a good way stable. Same coffee every morning, same scrambled eggs, same, have a good day, honey kiss from Deborah before she left for the library where she worked part-time. She loved books. Still does. Always had one in her purse, like some folks carry pepper spray. She wasn't always a librarian, though. Back when we met, she was in marketing, sharp as hell, always dressed like she was heading into a courtroom. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party. Deborah walked in like she owned the place and left with my number and a smirk I haven't forgotten since. Fast forward, and we're in this lovely little house with a decent-sized yard, a healthy retirement plan, and a freezer full of Costco chicken breasts. The American dream, right? Except lately, that dream's been twitching like it's having a bad one. It started with little things. I mean real small. Her alarm clock changed tones. Sounds dumb, but I noticed. She used to wake up to this chimey harp music. Now it's this sharp electronic beep, cold, efficient, like someone snapping fingers. Then her hair routine changed. Again, minor, but when you've lived with someone over a decade, you know their rhythms like your own. She started drying her hair in the guest bathroom instead of ours. She claimed it was because of the sunlight there, better for checking flyaways. I pretended to buy it. Her phone never rang anymore, or buzzed, or dinged. And before you ask, no, I didn't go through it. I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who keeps a respectful distance. Or used to be. Then came the Tuesday incident. Now Tuesday is trash day. It's also the day Deborah always leaves early because of team huddle at the library. She kisses my cheek at 7:42 a.m. on the dot. That's not a guess. I've checked the clock often enough. But last Tuesday, I went to take out the trash and saw her car still parked on the street at 8:05. I figured maybe she was sick, but she wasn't inside. Her keys were gone. I texted her something casual. Need me to bring you anything for lunch? And she replied, already at work. Thanks though, red heart. That emoji? That's when I knew something was off. Deborah doesn't emoji. Not even on birthdays. The woman writes out laughing instead of LOL. But that day, she dropped a heart like it was casual. I stood in the kitchen staring at my phone like it had just insulted my intelligence. I didn't say anything about it, not then. Just filed it under suspicious things Deborah suddenly does. I didn't confront her. I'm not impulsive. I gather, I watch, I wait. I do software QA for a living. My entire professional existence is about noticing subtle errors other people miss. But you can't just beta test your own wife. I figured maybe she was meeting someone. I didn't know who or why, but I know patterns, and Deborah had broken hers. Repeatedly. That Wednesday, I checked the thermostat history on the app. We have one of those smart models, Nest or Echo or whatever it is she insisted on getting. It logs every adjustment. I saw something strange. The house temp was changed at 11:12 a.m. and again at 2:47 p.m., both times when we were supposedly at work. I didn't say a word, just made a note. By the weekend, I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Maybe she was taking long lunches. Maybe she forgot something and came home. Maybe I was just looking for things. That all changed the following Sunday. We were invited to our neighbor Frank's barbecue. Frank is retired Army and has the loudest laugh in 3 counties. Deborah baked her famous lemon bars. Used to be my favorite until I realized she hadn't made them in nearly 6 months. But there she was in the kitchen, all domestic and cheerful, humming something that sounded suspiciously like Marvin Gaye. And that's when it hit me. Deborah doesn't hum. And she definitely doesn't bake unless she's anxious. At the party, she was bubbly, like the kind of bubbly you use to distract someone. She laughed at every joke, even Frank's terrible one about the raccoon in his garage. She played with the neighbor's toddler like she wanted one. And when I put my arm around her, she subtly tensed. Not flinched, not pulled away, just tensed, like her body recognized me before her brain did. I didn't say a word, just smiled and kept sipping my beer. Later that night, I lay in bed beside her, wide awake. She was already asleep, or pretending to be, with her back to me. And I did something I hadn't done in years. I got out of bed and started pacing. I opened the junk drawer, pulled out an old receipt from her favorite boutique, and stared at the date, April 12th. 3 months ago. That's when all this weirdness started. I still don't know why I did that. Maybe I was looking for something physical to tie to a shift in behavior. Or maybe I was losing it. That's when I found it. At the bottom of the drawer, wedged between expired coupons and a dead flashlight, was a parking stub. Dated May 3rd. Timestamp 3:41 p.m. Location, Green Line Executive Office Suites. Deborah doesn't work in an office. I flipped it over. There was a handwritten note. Just 2 letters, DC. I stood there, under the flickering kitchen light, holding that stub like it was Exhibit A. I didn't know what DC meant. Could be initials. Could be a city. Could be nothing. But in that moment, it felt like everything. I took a photo of the stub and put it back exactly where I found it. I've watched enough detective shows to know better than to tip off the suspect. That Monday, I called in sick. I told Deborah I had a migraine. She looked concerned, but not too concerned, like someone trying to care while hoping you'll stop talking. I waited till she left, then grabbed my keys and drove to Green Line Executive Suites. You ever get that feeling when you're walking into something you can't undo? I had it then. Full-on pit of the stomach, breath-hitching dread. The receptionist was friendly. Can I help you? Yeah, I said, playing dumb. I'm looking for DC. She tilted her head. Do you have a last name? No, just, I think they rent one of the offices here. She typed for a minute. We have a few tenants with those initials. Could it be Daniel Cray, David Connors, or Darlene Cummings? I blinked. What does David Connors do? He's a counselor. Marriage and family therapy. Marriage therapy? That's when it clicked. I'd been sleeping next to a woman in therapy without ever being told. I forced a smile. Thanks. Just curious. Wrong person, I think. She nodded politely. I left, but I didn't go home. I sat in my car, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. She wasn't cheating. Not yet, maybe. But she was hiding something. Counseling meant something was wrong in her mind, and I wasn't in the loop. That means I'm not her partner anymore. I'm a project. When I finally got home, she was already there, curled up on the couch reading, pretending like her world wasn't tilting. I watched her for a second before she noticed me, and I swear, I didn't recognize her. She looked like my wife, but the way she smiled, like I was the UPS guy. I smiled back, and right then I knew. Something's off, and I'm going to find out exactly what. No drama, though, just information. Stay tuned. The thing about secrets is, they're never just secrets. They're a whole underground plumbing system, and once you find one leaky pipe, the rest of the mess starts to gurgle. You don't know where the drip started, but suddenly your whole floor's soaked. That was Monday. Tuesday, I started poking holes in the drywall. Deborah was back to her usual, just busy self, and I played dumb. Smiled when I needed to. Asked about her day. Even offered to grill salmon, which I hate. She gave me a weird look like I was trying too hard, but then went back to scrolling through Zillow on her phone. I asked if she was thinking about moving. She said no, just window shopping. Window shopping for houses. Yeah, okay. I didn't sleep much that night. My mind ran like a bad playlist, looping questions with no chorus. Who's DC? Why lie about a therapist? Why does a woman who spends 20 minutes researching sandwich meat suddenly change her routine completely and pretend it's normal? I work in IT, and we have a saying, trust logs, not people. I started logging. That week, I created a shared calendar invite between our phones. Made up some dumb reason like syncing schedules would help us meal plan better. She nodded absently and clicked accept. Now I could see where she claimed to be. But that wasn't what cracked it. That was just my training wheels. What broke it wide open came the following Thursday, when the Amazon package arrived. I never open her stuff. Not because I'm noble, because she's terrifying about returns. She once gave me a 17-minute TED talk about how I'd ruined a sweater's packaging by pulling the tape too fast. So I don't touch her boxes. Ever. But this one was addressed to me. That was odd. I hadn't ordered anything. I sliced it open. Inside was a small, black hardcover book. No label. No branding. No invoice. It looked like a notebook. Except it wasn't blank. Inside were printed pages. Clean, serif font. It was a planner. Not like a day-to-day planner. More like a customized agenda. With headers like Tuesday 3:15 for PM/session 6/journal prompt. What the hell? I flipped to the first page and saw a typed cover sheet. Client name, Deborah Garrison. Service type, couples therapy, Solo Readiness Track. Counselor, David Connors, LMFD. Couples Therapy. Solo Readiness Track. What even is that? I'd never heard of it, and I work with psychologists in software development. That was my wife's name. In print. In a couples therapy planner I'd never seen. Delivered to my name. My address. And she was doing therapy without me. With a therapist whose name showed up on that parking stub. I turned the page. There were blank sections for writing reflections, but some were filled in. Her handwriting. Casual but precise. One page stopped me cold. Prompt. How do you imagine your life without your partner? She wrote. I imagine peace. Quiet. Freedom from the loop of managing his emotions. Not that he's cruel or bad. Just there. Like furniture. Like someone I owe but don't admire anymore. I want him, but I don't. And I think that's okay. I sat on the edge of our bed, holding the planner like it was something radioactive. Furniture. That's what I was to her. And that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the next page, where she had listed her support circle and external safe people. Guess who wasn't on that list? But guess who was? Daniel Carver, professional contact. Next to it, trust level, high. Emotional safety, reliable. Daniel, DC. My wife was emotionally safe with another man. A man I'd never heard of until I flipped that planner open like some kind of cursed diary. I wanted to go full cliché, storm into the room, throw the planner on the table, demand answers. But I didn't. Not because I'm passive. Because I wanted the whole picture. You don't accuse someone with pieces. You wait until you have the whole blueprint and then drop it on their head. So, I did something I haven't done since college. I printed out a resume. I made up a fake name, Greg Wallace. Generic, boring, the kind of guy who vapes and works in insurance. I set up a Gmail account, downloaded a headshot from a free stock site, and sent an inquiry to Mr. Daniel Carver's consulting email. He worked in professional development and apparently gave coaching sessions on navigating corporate conflict. I sent a message asking for a 15-minute exploratory call to see if I might want to book a full coaching series. 2 hours later, I got a reply. Hi Greg, happy to hop on a quick call. I have availability this Friday at noon or 2:30 p.m. Let me know what works best. Daniel. I picked noon. Friday came, and I was ready. Sat in my home office with my Bluetooth earbuds in and a legal pad pretending to be interested in interpersonal boundary management. Daniel joined the call. Voice, smooth, practiced. A little too charming. Like a guy who's read exactly one book on vulnerability and quotes it at every dinner party. I played dumb. Asked questions about his philosophy, how he helps clients, what kind of people he works with. He said this. Well, sometimes my clients come through referrals or from places like community leadership programs or even library workshops. I do a lot with educators and public-facing staff. Had a few from the local county library system recently, actually. Boom. I didn't react. Just nodded and jotted down nonsense on my notepad. At the end of the call, I asked, do you ever get personally involved with clients? Like socially? He laughed. Not usually. But you know how it is. When you really click with someone, sometimes boundaries flex a bit. You just have to know where the line is. Line. Flex. Click. It was all in there. We ended the call. I sat back and stared at the screen. I didn't have photos. I didn't have GPS. But I had something better. A leak. A pipe. And now the water was rising. That night, Deborah came home and acted like it was just another day in Pleasantville. She made herself tea, poured me a glass without asking, which she never does unless she's trying to look thoughtful. We sat on the couch watching reruns of The Office. She laughed too hard at a joke we've seen 20 times. I just watched her, sipping my drink. The same way you watch a magician when you already know the trick. By Saturday, I was done playing detective. I was ready to be a prosecutor. But I still needed the smoking gun. Sunday morning, I told her I was running errands. I drove instead to the main library branch, not hers, and requested an access badge as a visiting volunteer from my company. We sponsor reading initiatives, and the program director was happy to give me a tour. I wandered past the bulletin board, and there it was. A photo of Daniel Carver, smiling with his arm around a small team. Deborah, standing right next to him. Summer Leadership Cohort, Workshop Series, Redesigning Emotional Agility. And underneath it, a sign-up sheet for private one-on-one coaching sessions held off-site at Greenline Executive Suites. I took a picture, drove home. When I walked in, Deborah was on the phone, her tone low and sweet. The way she used to talk to me. She saw me and smiled, then quickly said, "Okay, I'll text you later," and hung up. I said nothing, just nodded, sat down, and began reading the news on my iPad. She started cooking dinner like everything was normal. But it wasn't. It wasn't even close. Because I knew. She hadn't just lied. She'd restructured our whole marriage like it was a project she was beta testing. And Daniel? He was her new developer. I didn't have video footage. I didn't need it. I had the planner, the lies, the calls, the off-site sessions, the calendar adjustments, the planner addressed to me. The furniture comment burned into my skull. I knew what I was dealing with. And so did she. She just didn't know I knew yet. But she would. Very, very soon. The following Monday, I set my alarm a full hour earlier than usual. Not because I had somewhere to be, but because I needed time. Time to get my head straight. Time to sit in the dark kitchen with my coffee and stare at the cupboards like they owed me answers. Deborah still had the same soft snore she always did, the one I used to find comforting. Now it sounded like fraud. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I wasn't even heartbroken, which surprised me. I was somewhere between amused and impressed. You have to hand it to someone who manages to run a full-blown double life without you suspecting for months. I mean, sure, the signs were there once I started looking, but she wasn't sloppy. She was methodical, calculated, polished. Like I said before, I don't confront without evidence. And now I had it. Real, printed, indisputable evidence. The planner, the workshop sign-up, the off-site coaching, the little breadcrumbs she never meant to drop. The only thing I hadn't done yet was tell her I knew. But that was about to change. I waited until Tuesday evening, after dinner. She made pork chops, something I liked, and she didn't. That alone felt like foreshadowing. Deborah rarely cooked anymore, and when she did, it was usually pasta or something she could claim was light. But tonight she went all out. Set the table. Cloth napkins. Candles. Almost romantic, except the tension was so thick I could have cut it with the butter knife. I played along. Said thank you. Ate everything on the plate. She asked how my day was. I told her the usual, slow tickets at work, annoying coworker drama, the coffee machine still busted. She nodded sympathetically, her fork tapping against the porcelain like a metronome. How about you? I asked, real calm, real even. Oh, the usual, she said, looking down at her plate. Some inventory sorting. A patron tried to return a book that's 3 years overdue, and Carol brought in homemade brownies. You know Carol. I nodded. Sure, Carol. What time did you get home again? She glanced up. A little after 5. What? I shrugged. Just asking. I could see her stiffen, just a touch. A tiny hiccup in her script. That's the thing about lies. They work fine until you press on them. Even gently. Then the seams show. We cleared the dishes, and I suggested we sit out on the porch like we used to. She agreed, probably because the guilt was getting heavy, and she needed a fresh breeze to pretend everything was normal. We sat in our old Adirondack chairs. The ones we bought during our 2nd year of marriage, before we had central air, when we spent more time outside than in. She stared out at the neighbor's porch light across the street. I watched her in profile, wondering how long she'd been planning her exit and whether she'd imagined this moment. Me next to her, still in the dark. You've been seeing someone, I said. She turned slowly. What? Her voice cracked a little. Not panic, just surprised that I'd cut straight through the surface. I repeated, you've been seeing someone. Daniel Carver. Coaching sessions, remember? Emotional safety, trust level high, all that. She stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. Like she was buffering. You went through my things, she said quietly. I smiled. You had a personalized therapy journal delivered to me. Not exactly a covert operation. She swallowed. I could see the mental filing system running behind her eyes, trying to sort whether to admit, deflect, or play dumb. I could see it all. I didn't cheat, she said. Oh, good. So we're going with not technically, I said, nodding. That's a solid one. I assume emotional affairs don't count if you use the word coaching and keep it in a rented office. It wasn't an affair, she snapped. It was support. It was counseling. And I'm sure it helped you figure out how to manage the burdens of living with human furniture. I read that part too. Her face paled. You read. All of it, I said. And let me say, it's beautifully written. Poetic, really. You even managed to make your own husband sound like an ergonomic chair. Classy. She stood up, arms crossed tight, like she was shielding herself from a breeze that wasn't there. You shouldn't have read that. Maybe not. But since I now know you've been confiding in another man about how emotionally dull I am while simultaneously planning to possibly leave me, I figured the statute of limitations on marital privacy had expired. Deborah didn't speak for a while. She just stood there, eyes glassy, mouth twitching like she wanted to say 10 things at once, but couldn't pick a favorite. Finally, she exhaled. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Like what? I asked. You sneak around, have your emotional crisis with a side of intimacy coaching, and then what? Gently ghost me? Fade out while I think you're just tired from shelving books. She sank back down into her chair. It wasn't about Daniel. He listens. That's all. That's all, I echoed. So what is it about? Because the Deborah I married didn't need a support circle to admit she was unhappy. She told me. She demanded things. She didn't hide behind journaling prompts. She glanced sideways. You stopped listening years ago. No, I said calmly. I stopped performing. You wanted a husband who read your mind, who filled in every emotional blank without having to be told what page we were on. I thought we were co-authors. Turns out I was just a footnote. She said nothing. And that's when it hit me. Not the betrayal, not the lying. It was the boredom. That's what got her. The day in, day out of life with someone predictable. I didn't fail her with action. I failed her with consistency. You're not in love with me anymore, I said. She didn't answer right away. But silence has its own weight. After a long pause, she whispered, I don't know. I nodded. Okay. She turned, startled. That's it. Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to beg, I said. I did that once before, when my first fiancé left me. I begged, pleaded, embarrassed myself for someone who'd already made up their mind. Not doing that again. You think I've made up my mind? She asked. I laughed, dry, humorless. You already made it up when you booked a therapy suite under your maiden name and started plotting an exit while still asking me to fix the faucet. She looked like she wanted to protest, but there was nothing left to spin. Every argument had expired. Every loophole closed. So we sat there, two people who used to share everything, now sharing nothing but mosquito bites and stale air. I don't hate you, she said finally. I'm not sure that makes it better, I said. We both stood. She went inside first. I stayed behind, watching the empty street, listening to the quiet buzz of porch lights and the occasional rustle of wind. So that was the confrontation. Clean. Quiet. No yelling. No thrown plates. No scenes. But it was done. Now came the part she wasn't expecting. Because while Deborah was busy managing her emotional safety and calibrating her truth, I was preparing something too. Something loud. Something permanent. She thought this was the end of the conversation. She had no idea it was only the intermission. The day I decided to burn the script Deborah had written for me, the part where I sulk, cry, maybe go to therapy while she transitions gently into a new phase of life with Mr. Emotional Safety. I was standing in our garage, looking at 3 boxes I hadn't touched since the day we moved in, labeled in Sharpie, Timothy, college, photos, and old office. I sliced open the one labeled old office and found what I was looking for, my portable label maker and my dad's old Rolodex. Still smelled like cigarette smoke and sawdust. I hadn't looked at that thing in years, but it held numbers that didn't live in the cloud. Numbers for people like my cousin Lindsay, who worked in local news, and Henry Kempler, the guy who used to run events at the Civic Center. Both owed me favors. People think revenge is about yelling and fireworks. It's not. It's about timing, precision, and the cruel elegance of irony. It's not about breaking hearts. It's about exposing what's already broken. I had a plan, and I had a deadline. The Community Library Board, where Deborah was now unofficially leading workshops with Daniel, was holding their annual donor mixer the following Thursday. An event that was always small, quiet, and polite. Donors sipping box Chardonnay and talking about local funding. Deborah was helping organize it this year. The guest list was predictable. Locals, sponsors, a handful of volunteers. No media, no spectacle. Until I made a few calls. First, I called Lindsay. Hey, I said, remember when I got you that interview with the parole board director who never talks to media? She groaned. Ugh, that guy? Yeah. What's up? I need a favor. Can you get a camera crew to the Greenville Library Foundation mixer next Thursday night? She hesitated. What am I covering? A professional misconduct story, I said. Is someone going to get arrested? No, I said. They're going to get uncomfortable. She was quiet for a second. You got something real? Or is this just your midlife drama? Oh, I've got real. And I've got paperwork to back it up. I texted her photos of the planner, the trust level entries, the schedule showing one-on-one sessions labeled private coaching during Deborah's working hours. She whistled through her teeth. Damn, she said. Okay, Tim, you've got my attention. Next, I reached out to Henry Kempler and asked him for a favor, a microphone hookup and a 10-minute speaker slot before the donor raffle. He owed me for writing the proposal that saved his grant last year. Henry was always a soft touch for stories that matter. You going to make a speech? He asked. I am, I said. A short one. You're not going to, like, protest the library or something, are you? No, nothing like that, I said. Just want to say thank you. Publicly. That wasn't a lie. By Thursday night, I had everything ready. My plan wasn't to destroy Deborah. It was to redefine her. We arrived together because she still thought we were in the limbo zone. The let's work through it stage, where the husband sulks and the wife holds the moral high ground for seeking clarity. I let her believe that. She wore her blue silk blouse, the one she hadn't worn since our 5th anniversary. Subtle message. She wanted to look sincere, presentable, unassuming, but also stunning. I wore my charcoal gray blazer, the one I wear to funerals. We walked into the mixer together. No arguing, no tension, at least not on the surface. She was all smiles, working the room with her clipboard. Daniel was there, of course, standing too close to her while pretending to be indifferent. He was sipping soda like a man allergic to consequences. When Lindsay's camera crew arrived, Deborah frowned slightly. She leaned over and asked me, "Why is Channel 8 here?" "No idea," I said, sipping my wine. "Probably a puff piece." At exactly 6:45 p.m., Henry tapped the microphone and called for attention. "We'd like to take a moment before the donor raffle to thank some of our supporters," he said. And one of them asked to say a few words. "Please welcome Timothy Garrison." Deborah blinked. The glass of wine paused at her lips. I walked up, calm and collected, looked out at the room full of friendly faces, local business owners, old retirees, and polite clappers. Lindsay stood at the back, camera on her shoulder, smirking just slightly. "Hi, everyone," I said into the mic. "I won't take much of your time. I just want to thank the Foundation for its commitment to public learning, especially the library staff and volunteers. My wife, Deborah, has worked tirelessly to support literacy initiatives, emotional development programs, and community wellness. You all know her. Some of you know her better than I do." A soft chuckle. Nervous. Deborah's smile was frozen. I continued. "In fact, one of the most meaningful programs this year has been the Emotional Agility Series. For those unfamiliar, it's a workshop focused on helping people realign their values, improve communication, and, this is my favorite part, navigate the transition out of emotionally stagnant relationships. Pretty revolutionary stuff." A pause. Several people looked toward Deborah. "What makes this program so unique is that it also offers one-on-one coaching sessions. Private, off-site, safe, discreet." The room was silent. I held up a printed page from the planner. "This is from a personalized planner sent to our home by mistake. It includes reflections like this one." I read it slowly. "I imagine peace, quiet, freedom from the loop of managing his emotions." That's my wife talking about me. To her coach, who also happens to be here tonight. Daniel shifted in place. "Now, I want to be clear. There's nothing illegal about emotional affairs. There's nothing in the bylaws about using professional development grants for personal therapy. But in a room full of donors and sponsors who believe in transparency, accountability, and ethical leadership, I thought it might be worth mentioning." I folded the page and put it in my pocket. "So thank you," I said, "to the Greenville Library Foundation, for teaching me more about my own marriage than 11 years of shared taxes ever could. And to Daniel Carver, thank you for showing my wife the door out. She's going to need it. Because starting tomorrow, I'll be changing the locks." I stepped down. Silence. Then someone coughed. Then a few claps. Slow. Unsure. Deborah stood there, pale, the clipboard trembling in her hand. Daniel looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Lindsay gave me a thumbs up. And me? I just walked out. No yelling. No crying. No chairs through windows. Just the sound of a man reclaiming his dignity in front of 50 polite strangers and one local news camera. I drove straight to my lawyer's house. Not his office, his house. Rick's been my friend since high school, and he owed me a favor for helping him rewire his basement last year. I handed him a folder with everything. Photos, emails, event flyers, planner pages, copies of receipts showing library grant money allocated to external consultants. I'm not just filing for divorce, I told him. I'm submitting a formal ethics complaint to the library board and requesting an investigation into misuse of public funds. Rick whistled. You want blood? No, I said. I want closure. And maybe a few door locks that work better. He laughed. I left him with the folder and went home. Deborah wasn't there. I'd packed a weekend bag for her and left it in the foyer. Next to it was a printed copy of her planner's trust circle. I'd highlighted Daniel's name in yellow. Beneath it, I wrote one sentence in red ink. It's easy to trust someone when you don't have to live with them. Then I turned off the porch light, locked the door, and slept like I hadn't in months. She came back on a Saturday. I wasn't expecting her to. Thought maybe she'd text first or send some kind of long, pseudo-apology disguised as emotional introspection. Something with words like space, healing, and my truth. But no, Deborah just showed up, like someone who lost her luggage and was hoping the airline still had it behind the counter. She didn't even knock. Just stood there on the front porch, keys in hand, staring at the door that didn't open for her anymore. I watched from the living room window, arms folded, heart rate steady. She tried the handle, found it locked, and finally rang the bell. I waited 3 full beats before answering. Hi, she said, small and breathless, like she wasn't sure if this was a conversation or a confession. She wore jeans and a gray hoodie, no makeup, no polish. The version of herself I used to see on Sunday mornings, before her wardrobe started looking more curated than our fridge. Forgot we changed the locks? I said. She didn't smile, just looked down at the keys in her hand, like they were pieces of an old puzzle she couldn't solve anymore. I'd like to talk, she said. I opened the door a few inches, just enough for her to see I wasn't hostile, but also not about to throw my arms around her like she tripped on her way back from a bad dream. You've got 10 minutes, I said. She stepped inside slowly, like the house might remember and reject her. She paused in the foyer, her eyes falling to the spot where I'd left her bag last week. Empty now? Clean. Just a blank space where something used to be. I wasn't sure if I'd be welcome, she said. You weren't, I said, shutting the door. But I'm curious what chapter of the planner this little visit falls under. Is this the reintegration phase or the see if he still cares enough to make you feel less guilty phase? She flinched, but not dramatically, just a twitch of the lips. The woman had always been composed. Even now. I deserve that, she said quietly. I do. I walked past her into the living room and sat down on the couch. Didn't offer her a seat. She stood awkwardly by the bookshelf, where she used to rest her glass of wine while browsing titles. Now she just looked like someone trying not to spill something invisible. I wanted to explain, she started. I think we're past that, Deb. Maybe, but I need to say it anyway. I didn't stop her. I let her speak. Out of morbid curiosity, maybe, or politeness, or because, despite everything, I still wanted to hear what kind of story she thought she was telling. I didn't set out to replace you, she said, choosing her words like someone walking barefoot across broken glass. I was just lost. It felt like our marriage was on autopilot, like I was disappearing. I nodded. And Daniel helped you feel seen. She nodded. Yes. I laughed, dry and cold. It's amazing what a guy can do when he only knows the curated version of you. Did you tell him how you leave wet towels on the floor? Or how you rerun the dishwasher when I load it because I don't understand spacing? No, just the greatest hits. Tim, do you love him? I asked. Her mouth opened, but the words got stuck somewhere between her throat and her pride. She looked down. I don't know, she said. That's worse, I replied. At least if you loved him, I could file this under stolen by passion. But not knowing? That's cowardice wrapped in confusion. She swallowed hard, eyes glassy. I wasn't trying to make her cry, but I wasn't going to coddle her, either. She'd spent months building a secret emotional life with another man while I fixed leaky pipes and updated the smoke detector batteries. I didn't sleep with him, she said. That doesn't make you better, Deb. That makes you strategic. There was a long silence. You humiliated me, she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. Oh, right, I said, sarcasm cutting sharp. The speech. Sorry I didn't let you keep up the performance. Next time I'll quietly fade into financial support while you rediscover yourself, with a clipboard and a budget code. You made it public. No, I said. You made it public. I just gave it a stage. Her eyes flashed, and for a second, I saw the old Deborah, the one who never let me win an argument without a fight. I was trying to figure out what I needed, she said. You never asked me what I wanted anymore. I asked, I snapped. You just stopped answering. She stepped forward, tone softening. So what happens now? I stared at her, amazed that she could still ask that question as if it wasn't already decided. What happens, I said slowly, is you get your things. You talk to your lawyer. And you prepare to be remembered as the woman who left her marriage for a man who took notes for a living. She didn't cry. That would have made things too clean. Instead, she stood still, frozen in a kind of disbelief that her plan hadn't played out like a thoughtful Instagram post. She thought I'd be devastated. And I was at first. But I'd graduated from pain to clarity. You always said I was emotionally reserved. I said, voice low. You wanted someone who'd talk more. Feel more. You found him. So go feel with him. She opened her mouth, then closed it, walked to the bookshelf and ran her finger along the spines, like she was searching for a time machine hidden in the pages. You know what the worst part is? She said, finally turning back to me. I doubt it, I said. The worst part, she said, is that I think I really did love you. I just got tired of trying to fix something that didn't want to be fixed. And I got tired of trying to impress someone who'd already decided I wasn't enough, I replied. There it was. Mutual resignation. The final breath before the autopsy. She nodded, defeated, and stepped toward the front door. I'll be by Sunday to pick up the rest of my things. I didn't answer, just watched her walk out. She paused with her hand on the doorknob. Did you ever think we'd end up here? She asked. No, I said. But you did. She flinched again, this time visibly. Then she opened the door, stepped into the gray light of the porch, and closed it gently behind her. I didn't move. Just sat there, staring at the empty space where she used to stand and ask what kind of wine I wanted with dinner. And for the first time since this all began, I felt something close to peace. Not because it was over, because I hadn't let it break me. She came back for a conversation. I gave her the truth. She came looking for closure. I gave her a mirror. And the best part? I never raised my voice. I just raised the bar. Sunday came, and with it, the final act. It was gray out, cloudy, but not dramatic. No thunderstorm to cue the heartbreak. No wind whipping leaves into poetic swirls. Just the bland stillness of a day waiting to be ignored. I got up early, folded the laundry, and made myself breakfast like it was any other Sunday. Because now it was. Deborah texted at 9:17 a.m. Be there in 30. I'll be quick. I read it while sipping my coffee and didn't respond. She no longer needed my permission to enter or exit my life. She was on borrowed time now, just a former chapter coming back to collect the loose ends. I'd boxed her things up the night before. Everything was neatly labeled, grouped, sealed. Her books, her winter coats, her coffee mugs that always had some cute feminist slogan. The framed quotes she hung above the desk in our guest room turned yoga nook. Her old tea collection, the one she swore she needed to relax, but never actually used. Even the lavender pillow spray. I packed it all with the kind of care she once reserved for other people's perceptions. When she arrived, I didn't meet her at the door. I let her knock. 3 knocks. Then silence. I opened it slowly, leaned against the frame, and gestured behind me. Boxes are in the living room. Take your time. She looked tired. Not makeup tired or haven't slept tired. Just worn. Like her spine had taken on the shape of all the indecision she'd carried the last few months. She stepped inside without a word. I didn't offer coffee. Didn't ask how she was. She started lifting boxes with surprising efficiency, like she'd been rehearsing this part too. Grab, stack, haul. No pauses. No questions. She didn't even look around. And then, about halfway through, she spoke. You painted the hallway. I didn't answer. It wasn't a question. Just a casualty she hadn't expected. She paused near the front closet. I'd left one thing out on purpose. The coat she wore on our honeymoon. An olive green trench. Nothing fancy. But it was the one she'd worn when we'd stood together in Charleston, watching the horse-drawn carriages go by, her hand in mine, smiling like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She reached out and touched it. Can I? It's yours, I said. She nodded and folded it gently over her arm, like something fragile. Then, after another trip to the car, she came back in, this time without a box. Can I sit? She asked, eyeing the couch. I shrugged. Free country. She sat on the far end. Same place she used to curl up with her blanket and Netflix, half watching while scrolling Zillow on her phone. I stayed standing. She looked up. Are you really doing this? Cold turkey. I frowned. What's this? Refusing to stay friends with someone who lied to me for 4 months while sharing a bed and making meatloaf. She winced. I didn't mean for it to turn out like this, she said. Yeah, that line makes the rounds a lot. Right next to you deserve better. And I was confused. She took a breath, steadied herself. Daniel and I aren't together. Not my business, I said. I thought you'd want to know. I don't, I replied. Because here's the thing, Deb. It was never about him. It was about the fact that you didn't even try. You didn't come to me. You didn't say you were unhappy. You made a spreadsheet of your emotional priorities and outsourced your heart to a consultant. She blinked hard. I tried. In small ways. You didn't notice. You whispered in a hurricane, and then blamed me for not hearing. She leaned back. So that's it. We just end like this. This isn't an end, I said. This is the second act. Yours, mine, whatever. You chose your path. I'm just not walking it with you anymore. She looked at her lap, picked at her thumbnail. Something she did when she was nervous. I used to put my hand on hers when she did that. I didn't now. I miss how we used to be, she said quietly. We all miss the beginning, I said. That's why people rewatch the first episode, not the finale. She stared at me, eyes glassy. Do you hate me? I shook my head. No, but I think I stopped loving you a while ago and just didn't realize it. Maybe the part of me that did loved who you used to be, or who I thought you were. Not this version. I didn't know I was going to change, she said. We never do, I said. It just sneaks up, like water boiling under the lid. There was silence again, the kind that has weight, that carries endings on its back. Finally, she stood. I'm sorry, she said. I know that doesn't fix anything. No, I said. But it's something. She nodded, turned, and walked to the door. Paused once more. Will you be okay? I didn't hesitate. Already am. She gave me a long look. The kind you give a house you're leaving for good, trying to burn it into your memory just in case you regret selling it later. Then she walked out. I closed the door gently. No slam. No drama. Just quiet. Later that afternoon, I poured myself a drink and sat on the porch. Watched the neighbor's kid ride his scooter up and down the sidewalk. Watched the sun stretch shadows across the grass. And I thought about the last 11 years, not with bitterness, but with clarity. There were good moments. Great ones, even. But good moments aren't enough to carry a life. They're flashes. Memories. They don't fill the gaps when respect disappears or when honesty becomes optional. Deborah hadn't cheated in the Hollywood sense. No lipstick on the collar, no stiletto in the bedsheets. But she'd done something harder to fix. She'd stopped choosing me, one day at a time, in tiny, silent ways, until she was no longer mine, and I was just the guy she lived with. So now I'm not that guy, and that's okay. I didn't get closure from some grand apology. I didn't get the clean break with answers tied up in bows. I got what most of us get. A slow fade. A betrayal revealed like a glitch in a system. And then a choice. I chose myself. Not in the cheesy #way. Not with a gym membership or a new haircut. But with dignity. With boundaries. With quiet. Because sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is nothing dramatic at all. Just close the door. And let it stay closed. Subscribe to the channel